From Swin. Austin Stoker. John Murray. And where is Bobby Porter? Please, Bobby.
I am standing up, Ronnie. You still awake?
Yeah.
Anybody have to go pee or anything? All right.
Depends.
So, wherever you like.
Are you in from Monte?
Thank you for coming.
I have no idea who these people are. I just
So I thought I would start by asking Don what you thought of Conquest so many years later. I know you stayed to watch the film, and I'm curious to hear your fresh perspective on watching the film.
Well, it has been since 1972 that I haven't seen that movie. And, I was pleased to see that. I feel it still works today. I thought that it had very good production values. And I thought the script was very good. It had a lot of logic to it, and there's a lot of real thought behind it. It's not just an action film. The other thing I liked about it is that you could see the violence in the battles, but you didn't see a lot of blood spurting, and then your close-ups of people dying and so on. It was sort of general. You got a tremendous idea of the violence that was happening, but they didn't make it gory, and I appreciated that.
One thing, of course, that was different than what you filmed was the very end of Conquest. And for those of you, I'm guessing most of you know that there was another version of the film where Breck was quite savagely murdered on the steps in front of Caesar, and for a variety of reasons, but mostly to get the rating down to make the film more family-friendly, there was a sort of a voiceover recorded by Roddy to kind of turn the story around and make it more hopeful. And I'm curious to know a little bit about, was that a huge surprise to you when the film first came out?
No, it wasn't, because they had already asked me, said that they wanted my character to live, because they wanted me to come back for the next film. But I didn't want to come back for the next film because I didn't want to get the idea of people that this is like a series. I played that part, and now I wanted to go on to another part. I always like to do things, whatever I did in one film, I like to do the opposite on the next film. So I try to do that throughout my career. So that's what happened with the film. They expected me to come back, but I wouldn't come back.
Austin, tell us a little bit about taking over the MacDonald character. Obviously, you play the brother of MacDonald that we see in Conquest. Yes. Tell us a little bit about your interest in the Apes stories and why you wanted to do it.
My interest in the Apes stories was very small, actually, because the first time I got the script, I thought, this is impossible. Am I supposed to be for the apes or against the apes? I wasn't sure of my character. It was stood for. And it never really occurred to me until we actually started shooting and I began acting it. And then it just came naturally. And I could not plan how I felt about anything about this. It was an unusual story. So I couldn't plan what I was going to do at all. I had to wait and see what affects me and then react. That was my take on it. I was reacting.
Bobby, you had a very interesting story about how you came to be involved in the Apes universe. Tell us a little bit about getting involved.
pure dumb luck. I work cheap. I've used that line before, but if you look carefully during Conquest, some of that film was actually shot at the University of California, Irvine. And I actually skipped my organic chemistry lab to go down and see this film crew. And ironically, I had done my very first film the summer before There's a little film called Ace, Eli, and Roger of the Skies. Don't look for it, you won't be able to find it. But it was the same film crew, the same Fox film crew, same guys, prop guys, drivers. Hey, what are you doing here? I go to school here. What are you doing here? Wasn't it obvious? Got apes running all over our campus. And I had lunch with the guys. And during lunch, I got a chance to meet the immortal J.D. Thompson. And 6 months later, I'm sitting in his office, going, yeah, I do stunts, but yeah, I can say a line or two. Little did I'd forgotten I was actually in the movie world. I thought I had like 2 scenes. I died. I guess just even cried and I died. But it's true that sometimes kismet, being in the right place at the right time, is better than talent. Because I had no talent. I just happened to be in the right place at the right time.
Franz, you mentioned to me the other day that what was important for you was working on films that had a strong social impact. And I'm curious what you think about the work on the Planet of the Apes.
I am very impressed and admiring science fiction film and the creativity from the imagination of one of us who dream up of a story which actually is a social comment, and particularly the Planet of the Apes, because of the fact that it is presenting something that we are not willing to ponder upon, the difference in how we treat animals. And a film like The Planet of the Apes is somehow luring an audience to think of the unthinkable and actually something that promotes fear. We treat animals badly, or we treat others badly because we're afraid of them. To create an environment where there is a drama occurring between the unrecognized intelligence of the animal beings and man fighting over territory or existence or supremacy. And in this film, it is almost enticing the audience to consider the possibility, whether symbolically or realistically, that there is deep intelligence and responsibility, whether in the animal world or whether the human world. And I admire that very much because a great deal of, or not a great deal, but few of the creative people in this industry recognize the premise of making science fiction film as a great opportunity to teach, to provoke thought, and to express what they have been to digest within their own lives, and subjects that are very dear to them, and so they transpose it into a form which will be entertaining to all of us, and yet we are faced with very important topics that we are not willing to ponder upon daily. And in The Planet of the Apes, in each episode, you see that drama and conflict and developing and battering for supremacy, battering for survival, battering to have a better life than the other. And anyway, I think it's a remarkable work of art. And as we were walking into the hall, I pointed out to my friend those extraordinary drawings of superb artists that spend their lives behind doors, never getting credit for their work and their style and their creativity. And I wonder why those sketches that you see on the wall, why aren't they in a museum to recognize the great talent that it takes to make a film like this? And
Well, that's a very nice segue into one of the unsung heroes. Sitting next to you, Tom Burman, who, and I say unsung, but I should say uncaptioned, because one of the photos that we have in our exhibit is with you and John Chambers. And when I asked Fox for the caption, they didn't have anything. So I am now going to correct that, luckily, and make sure that you're properly credited in the exhibit. But also, a lot of the work that was done on the makeup is really the centerpiece, I think, of our exhibit. The plaster molds, the prosthetics, and it's really the reason that this all works, because you and John and Dan, you guys found ways in which the audience would be able to really care about these characters.
Hold on, I gotta interrupt for a little bit. Ladies and gentlemen, this is not just Tommy Burman. This is 6-time Emmy Award winning Tommy Burman. This is 27-time Emmy nominated Tom Burman. This is Academy Award nominee Tom Burman. And the brain behind his family is sitting in the front row. Nobody other than at USC would you have a 5-time Emmy Award winner sitting in the front row. Barry, stand up. Barry, go ahead. 5 Emmys. Let's go. Now you can go.
So they chose those seats, Bobby. So Tom, take us back into the early days when you had to figure these challenges out, and give us some insight into how the actors responded to this happening to their faces for so many hours in the morning, what creative challenges you had to overcome, and maybe how some of that evolved.
Well, I'm going to go back to the very beginning. I was working, my father called me. I worked in a factory in Newport Beach. My father called me and asked me if I wanted to help sculpt a 12-foot tall King Kong at Don Post Studio, and if I had any vacation time. So I went and I helped out. They asked me to stay, and I became a member of the Don Post Studios, and this makeup artist stopped by the studio and wanted a quarter latex, and there was nobody there, so I gave it to him and I had to replace it myself. And he told me about an apprenticeship at 20th Century Fox. So I went to interview at 20th Century Fox, and Ben Nye, who was department head, hired me. And while I was working there, I was about 6 months later, I was cleaning up his makeup station in his office. And I hear he walks in his office with a lab man named Dick Smith, not the famous Dick Smith, but a Dick Smith from Fox. And I hear him talking about this movie that can't be done. And I'm an apprentice, so I'm not supposed to be listening, I'm supposed to be cleaning. And so the more I listened, he said, they want to get Bud Westmore to come in and do the makeup for this movie. Bud Westmore was department head of Universal Studio at the time. And he had done a picture called A List of Adrian Messenger. But I knew, because I just worked with John Chambers on this project for this gorilla, Don Post. He was a part owner of that project. I knew that he was the one who was really responsible for it, and I didn't know how to say it. So finally I got a Tourette's moment. I just blurted it out. I said, he didn't do it. And then I said, well, who did do it? And I said, John Chambers. How do you know that? And I said, because I've seen the pictures, I've seen the appliances, I've seen what he does. And they said, well, do you have his telephone number? And I said, I do. And they said, well, give him a call and see if he wants to come pick up a script. So he came in, he picked up the script. I didn't see him that day. And the following Monday morning, I walk out of the makeup department. He pulls up in his little Buick Skylark and he gets out. And he waves me over and he says, Tommy, it's you and me. And I said, what? And he holds up the script too. Planet of the Apes. And he said, I'm going to win the Academy Award. So on January 2nd, he and I started that movie on a table that was 2 feet wide and 4 feet long. A 4 foot by 2 foot table, a marble top table. And John, I can see just his frustration because the script calls for a tremendous amount of work. And the old character, Dick Smith, was a old curmudgeon. He was about to retire anyhow. And he was looking for his number one brush. And he said, Johnny, you see my number one brush? And I see John go, number one brush? No, I said, well, I might have put it over there, Dick, because we cleaned this table off. He said, no. He said, I didn't see it over there. I want my number one brush. And John said, here, I'll give you a number one brush. He said, I don't want your number one brush. I want my number one brush. And I see John, big, tough Irishman, raised in Chicago. His father was a plumber. I see John just go purple. He goes, he said, you know what? Get out of here. And he throws him out of the lab. And he said, Tommy, we're going to clean this place out and we're going to get started. And so for 6 weeks, it was just he and I putting that together, doing the mock-ups of the original faces. We used a guy named Joe Wong, played the Dr. Zayas character, the orangutan, and a guy named George Sasaki wore the chimpanzee appliance, and a girl named Candace, she was Filipino, and she wore the female chimpanzee face. And that's how we started. And John wanted people with not big features, because you want people with flatter features, because you can always build out what you can't take away. So it was a matter of invention. You know, we started off with scratch. We didn't know how we were going to do it, but we knew we were going to do it, and I think it changed my life.
Tell us a little bit about the experiences the different actors had, from Roddy to Kim to Maurice, because I've read that 2 of them were not very happy about the process.
Roddy was a great sport. Roddy, at the end of the day, he grabbed that face and just pulled it off. He didn't wait for somebody to remove it. He never complained once. Now, Kim Hunter is a very sweet lady, great actress. But like a lot of ladies, she had that kind of fine nappy hair on her face. So we put this stuff down with spirit gum. And by the end of the day, that spirit gum crystallizes. And no matter how much you try to take it off with a mixture of, they wanted to save the appliances, so they didn't want to use some of the solvents that would eat up the foam latex. And so they'd have to very carefully pull that piece away, and it would pull that hair, and she'd be in tears. And it took almost an hour to get that face off of her. Maurice Evans, I never heard him complain. He always, in typical English, he always had a joke about it, but I know it was pretty uncomfortable for him. But I never heard him complain.
Well, Bobby, you're the only person that we'll have in this retrospective that was subject to all of that makeup. Tell us, what was a day in that chair?
Oh boy. You guys all still awake? Okay, before I get to that story, I just want to tell you all, if it weren't for you, this would never have happened. So thank you very much for being faithful fans. Even on a Wednesday night. Who knew? It was a very long day. I mean, we would get up early in the morning. We would be, I lived in Orange County, so my day started at 2 a.m. I'd drive to Fox, or I would drive to Malibu Creek State Park, which back then was Fox property. It was Fox Ranch. We kind of blew the crap out of Fox Ranch, didn't we? So I knew it was going to be a long day. And the reason why I was there was because I was playing a child without the restrictions of child labor laws. They could have hired a 12-year-old to play my part, probably a little better, but with 3.5 hours of makeup and an hour to get out of it, and 3 hours of school, it leaves a half an hour on the set to actually say mommy, mommy, daddy, daddy. So I got to say mommy, daddy, and that's the story. We had a lot of fun back then. You gotta remember, this was the early 70s, and we were kind of crazy. We'd get makeup at Fox Studios, and then they would put us in a bus and drive us to Malibu Creek State Park. Well, Pico Boulevard, at rush hour, 25 apes sitting in the bus, red light, open the door, 25 apes would run around the bus, jump back in the bus, and we just continue on down to the freeway. We could get away with stuff like that. The last day that I worked on the film, Tommy and all the guys were getting all the makeup off, and I said, oh my God, I got a play to do. I was working at UC Airline on a stage play. I gotta go. So I got in my street clothes and left the makeup on. I drove from Malibu to Irvine as an ape. By then it's the fifth movie, nobody even looked. It's like, oh yeah, there's another ape going down the road. When I got to the theater, it was already dark, and I got into the backstage, and I had 5 other actors that were going to walk on the set with me. And they were freaking out that I wasn't going to make it on time. Guys, I'm here, I'm good, we're good. 30 seconds later, my cue comes up, and we walk out on stage, and we go under Rosencrantz and Guildenstern. I'm doing Shakespeare. In ape makeup. And nobody even notices. 30 seconds goes by, I'm playing the king. And even my fellow actors hadn't seen me. And they're trying to keep a straight face, and I'm just going at it. I've had this thing on for 20 hours now. I'm gonna make it pay. Anyway, a collection of short stories. I know we're gonna punch this up a little later, but I want you all to know, for those of you who are Apes fans or who have just become Apes fans, there is a tremendous story being told right now. The documentary is called Making Apes, The Artists Who Changed Film. And for all intents and purposes, it's Tommy's life story, along with a whole bunch of other people. The who's who list of people who have joined in to support this documentary. Will, where are you? Our director. Will Conlon. Hey, Will. That young man has somehow convinced, between him and Mary and Tommy and Will's amazing family, 40 Academy Award nominations to date are people who have contributed to their voice to make sure that this story gets told properly. 40 Academy Award nominees, okay? Okay, well, some of the guys have had more than one. All right, Rick Binder, blah, blah, blah. Okay. Yeah, he was kind of good. You guys pay attention. It's going to be coming out early next year. I'm going to hold his feet to the fire. We will make sure that this is going to be worthy of all of you. None of you will be disappointed. There will be an Indiegogo site up here fairly soon. Any of you guys want to skip Starbucks for a couple of days and send us $10, that'd be awesome. It's called Making Apes.
We're already plotting a screening here.
There you go. There you go. Please tell your friends, tell all your other 8 friends, both of them, and let's make this thing a huge hit, because it's a story that's taken 50 years to be told, and it's certainly overdue. So, there you go.
I want to go back to the political commentary of the 2 films that we watched tonight, because the first Planet of the Apes was very effective as, saying a lot about our society through metaphor, allegory, and once we get to Conquest, I think that the commentary has become far more specific, I think, to certain moments in our culture of the 70s that were almost explicitly stated as opposed to sort of more universal. And I think that's really fascinating and a sign of a franchise that still had a lot to say on its 4th and 5th films. And there's a dialectic between violence and nonviolence in terms of where our society is going and how the oppressed can be liberated, how society can change. There's just so much to chew on that we get out of Paul Dane's script and J. Lee Thompson's direction. I'm curious if anyone wants to comment on working with the 2 of them. I mean, I know that Paul only wrote the first treatment of Battle and then had to step away, but their work is so affecting because it does feel like it's grappling with really big issues at the time. So I open that to anyone if you want to jump in about the fact that these films, in their later years were maybe even more politically relevant than ever.
I think that there's something in my feeling about Conquest as far as as part of the social commentary, the thing that I see in it is that just because we can do things to people that are not our people, just because we can do things to them, doesn't mean that we should. Just because that we could make slaves out of the apes doesn't mean that we should make slaves out of the apes. Because it's like, it's the same thing as the cruelty to animals. I think that's a theme that's in the Apes movies. It's to be considerate and kind to animals. To like how anybody can be mean to a dog is beyond me, because dogs do nothing but love people. That's what they're on Earth for. And that, yet a lot of people, again, they're cruel to dogs. They're working slaves out of dogs and hurt them, and that's not right. And I think you can extend that into the treatment of the apes and planet of the apes.
Anyone else?
Okay, I got it. J. Lee Thompson, The Guns of Navarone? Yeah. Big name. Really knew his stuff. We thought, oh, he's just directed a couple of sequels for Planet of the Apes. No, he was the man. And one day I was on the set and I asked him, because I was 19, I knew everything. I said, Mr. Thompson, you look like you're about ready to retire. You must have been like, what, 50? Had to be ready to just walk away. I said, how long are you going to keep doing this? And he said, kid, I'm going to do it until I get caught. It was the greatest line in Hollywood ever. And I've stolen that line for 46 years. I hope I never get caught.
It was said that a culture of a society can be measured by the way we treat our animals. And that was said by Mahatma Gandhi. So we all can look at our world and see how we respect and protect the animal world and understand it. And for my part, love it. And it was recognized that we are a very young culture, almost like a sibling society, as Robert Bly would put it. And young people are often careless and heartless with animals. And we have to search for the more mature, loving, caring, responsible part of ourselves to be mirrored as the evolution of our society. So that's my point of view.
Heavy stuff for a Wednesday night, isn't it?
Austin, the MacDonald characters in the two films are really the voices of compassion in a very violent story. And, they're really the ones that allow Caesar to understand that his own anger will lead to everyone's demise. So I'm curious, from your standpoint, when you said that it was sort of difficult to understand how to play him, how did some of those issues impact your performance?
Well, I wish you had told me that when you started. That is an excellent point. That is the thing that really bothered me, because I had to decide for myself. I'm sorry. I had to decide for myself, what is my purpose here, in terms of the story, because it was never told to us specifically who we were, what we were doing there. So I had to make up for myself each day. Why am I here with these animals? And I'm not an animal myself. Do I have to feed them? Do I take care of them? So The only way I could get through the whole day was to make a decision. So my decision was that I fed all of them. I fed MacDonald, I fed everybody in my mind. And I'd go out to the scene, to the set, ready to, okay, what I'm going to cook today? Oh, I think I'll cook a dog. And make all this in my mind, just so I can get through the day, because it was never given to me, or I guess to any one of us, what specifically was our purpose in terms of the character that we played. And it was a character I'd never played before. Who am I? Why am I with these animals? So that was how I approached it. Purely makeup.
Don, tell us a little bit about some of the influences that went into creating your character.
Well, one of the things I did, which I had never done in any other film, is I said, what is the essence of the dictator? I said, well, the best dictator is Hitler. And so the German dictator. I happen to be fluent in German, so what I did is I rehearsed all my lines, I translated them into German, and I rehearsed them all in German. And I worked on the character through German. And it really helped me to have that kind of severity all the way through, not only when he was being cruel, but there was a severity that I tried to express in everything, even his quiet moments, that there was a severity. There was never people would never feel easy around him, no matter what he was doing. He might be doing something totally benign, but still there was always a feeling of danger about him. And I worked on that through the German. Maybe it was just my own fantasy, but anyway, I felt that it helped me in doing the role.
I want to make sure that all of you have a chance to ask questions, but I do want to ask if anyone has any favorite memories of either Arthur Jacobs, who was a USC graduate, or Roddy McDowell.
I have a favorite memory of
Microphone.
sorry, I'm sorry. I'm not used to this. I have a favorite memory of what's his name? The musician that played
Oh, wait.
Sure. Paul Williams, yeah.
Paul Williams. My memory of getting ready for a set, everybody is very serious. And the director goes, action! And Paul Williams and the other apes broke it right into a dance.
That's nice.
Some popular song.
Probably one he wrote.
Probably. And the director had to just go on the horse and say, okay, wait a minute, let's stop. Yeah, he was dying laughing. I saw the scene all over again. And I've stayed in my mind the whole time. Oh, it was stop in the name of love.
I really hope someone captured that.
About Roddy, I know Roddy for many years, from long before he was as a grown-up, before he was famous as an actor again. I knew him during his struggling times. I had met him when I was on Broadway in the Tennessee Winter's play The Rose Tattoo, and he was struggling to make the transition to a mature actor because he was, as you know, like one of the biggest child actors that's ever been on the screen, and a wonderful child actor. But he was having a terrible time getting work, and also when he got work, he was having trouble often in the role, and to bring the maturity that his years have, but his face didn't have yet. And he was having a terrible time at home too, because as a child star, his mother would do a lot of entertaining. And being a star at the time, he had a lot of people who were fawning over him and over her. And so he had to get out. And number one, he had to convince his family that he was no longer a star and earning money like a star, and they can't go and spend money like they had been doing. So he had to do that, and at the same time, he really had to struggle to get roles, and when he, as I say, when he got the roles, he had trouble making them be powerful to the audience, the way his child performances were so powerful to the audience. And the big break for him came when he went totally opposite to what he was in type, and where he played the evil knight in Camelot. He did that on Broadway, and that was a stepping stone. That brought him in to acceptance as a mature actor, and got great praise as a mature actor. And I went through all this kind of struggle with him. A lot of depression, a lot of really bad times, and it was wonderful to see how he finally came out.
Well, I was the new kid on the block, and so I was too naive not to ask any and every question. And the second day of filming, I noticed that Roddy had this very distinct mannerism that no other appliance had. And so I asked my makeup artist, the incomparable Jimmy Phillips, who, God rest his soul, was gone a few months after the film finished, how it was that Roddy was able to move this appliance in a way that nobody else could do. And he kind of went stone cold. He says, "Oh, we don't talk about that." It was like a CIA secret, you know. And even the president's son-in-law doesn't have access to that. A little too soon?
Nope.
Not soon enough. I said that 2 weeks ago. So, I knew it was a USC film. So I said, well, if Roddy is willing to share with me how he does this, would you be able to duplicate it? And he went, well, yeah, okay, you know. And Jimmy was a new kid. He was still maybe just out of the apprenticeship program at that point. And he wasn't going to ruffle any feathers like this guy. He ruffled all the feathers. That's what he was known for. That's why he's here tonight. Mr. 27 Emmy nominations. Well, all right, whatever. So I asked Roddy on the second or third day of the show, I said, so Dad, how do you say no to your kid? I said, how does it we get this little thingy on your nose? And he goes, okay. Go tell him you can do it. I said, well, you know, I am your son. I should look like you. I should be able to have the same manners as you. I am going to be the king someday. Okay. All they did was, these foam latex appliances were so brilliantly made and so fine. This is a big screen. Did you guys see the edges?
No.
Did you guys see where the real people stopped? No. That wasn't motion capture. That was real people and these geniuses. That was high tech 50 years ago. God bless you guys. So, all we did with Roddy that was different from anybody else, and it was a little carefully kept secret, is the bridge of the nose was thicker than anywhere else. And God bless him, it was either, who was doing his makeup back then? Was it John?
Freddie Blau.
It was Freddie Blau. Freddie would go in and hollow out the inside of the bridge of the nose so that it was more flexible than anybody else. So Roddy had more expression, he had more range of motion than anybody else. And the following day, so did I. Tell us a good story.
Well, I guess I didn't have the elaborate makeup, but
You didn't need any, honey. You were beautiful enough.
I think I got the part because I was 10 years under contract with 20th Century Fox. And my friend Alexa Dubois was a friend of Natalie Trendy, and so I ended up being part of some of the gathering as a guest and more social than professional. But eventually I ended up with a makeup chair, and I was to be a mutant, so they have a burn here that had to be represented. And Natalie Trendy walked into the room and said, "Oh, I thought you would look worse than that," and she walked out.
Natalie played my mom, and her husband happened to be the producer of the product, so.
Well, and of course, Natalie herself was a mutant with much heavier makeup in Beneath the Planet of the Apes.
Yeah, I mean, one feels humbled because you have all those extraordinary artistry put on people's actors' faces, and they are able to actually put through all that, whatever it's made of, and emotions and expression and fear and tenderness and thinking. And this is actually a non-human facade that you are stuck in for hours and hours and hours. And it took 4 or 5 hours in the morning?
3.5 if
you
you were
started
good.
at 4 o'clock in the morning.
Oh, yeah.
It's mind-boggling that professional actors are able to show their heart, their soul, their perception and their artistry through rubber. I mean, it's all of us as human beings have difficulty to show ourselves without a makeup on our face, right? We fabricate a persona because we feel that society demands that you be that kind of a person, or that you would be acceptable or presentable as that kind of a person. So you fasten yourself in front of the mirror or simply in your own sensitivity to conform to what society expects out of you. But an actor actually is able to do that not on a learning process from the time you are a teenager to become an adult, but an actor is able to do that every day. Walk into a room, get worked on for 4 or 5 hours, try to open their eyes and see if their eyelashes are not stuck sideways somewhere.
Happened frequently.
Or if whatever it is not peeling off on the corner of your nose. And also you have to take into account that all of that, and particularly in the time that we were working in an enormous light.
Huge.
Very
hot
light. And you boil underneath, you are cooking underneath that stuff. And yet they are able to perform and put a personality through and make you believe that they are real. And that, I think, it's just an extraordinary profession, and I deeply respect that profession.
I'll tell you an Arthur Jacobs story. We were probably in maybe 3 weeks from January 2nd. And John had created, from the cast we took, he had created the sculptures on their faces, on their plaster faces, and he had painted them and had hair on them. They were mock-ups to show Arthur Jacobs and Mort Abrams, the social producer, to have them come and take a look. And I asked John if I couldn't sculpt a gorilla. And he said, "Yeah, Tommy, but you do it in the back room. Not everybody's going to see it. Just do that for your own edification." So I was real tickled, and I did it only during my lunch hour. And I sculpted this gorilla, and it wasn't very good. And I hear a knock on the door. I open the door, and it's Arthur Jacobs and Mort Abrams, but John's not there. And so I panicked, because I know he wanted to know when they were coming in prior to taking a look at his mock-ups. And so I run up to the makeup department. I said, "John," I find him when he's eating lunch. I said, "John, Mort Abrams and Arthur Jacobs are there, and they're looking at the mock-ups. He says, "Oh God, Tommy, they're not supposed to be there. You let them in." I said, "I couldn't help it." He follows me back down to the lab, and he's really nervous, and they're looking at it, and they're looking at his mock-ups. They're going, and Arthur Jacobs said, "You know, John, I'm going to ask a leading actress to play this role of Zyra, and I don't know if she's going to want to wear this face. You know, it's a little, you know, I don't know." He said, "I just don't have the answer. I don't have the answer." And so Mort Abrams is walking around, and he's trying to figure out an answer, and he's looking at the ceiling and everywhere, and he wanders into the back room. And pretty soon I hear him say, "Arthur, come in and take a look at this." And I see John look at me and
Yeah.
"What?" And so they go in and they look at the sculpture I did. And as I said, it wasn't very good. And it was someplace between ape and human because I was just trying to work out all the particulars. And Mort says, "You know, there's something about this, it's evolutionary. It's a little more human. It's not quite so ape and, you know, with that big flat wide nose of a chimpanzee you put on the other face. I don't know if an actress will ever wear this." And John's going, "Oh, yeah, okay, yeah, well, you come back next week and we'll take a look. We'll fix it. We'll see what we can do. We'll try to make some changes. Yeah, okay, yeah." But they keep talking about it. Now, me, as a young apprentice, I'm very proud that they're looking at what I'm doing. And I realize I'm up shit's creek without a paddle.
Oh, yeah.
I'm going to be punished tremendously because this big Irishman is purple. And so they said, "Okay, we'll be back next week." And so they leave. And John looks at me and he goes, "Huh? Huh?" He goes in the back room, he comes back and he picks my sculpture up and he smashes it on the floor. And he said, "You know what you are?" He said, "You're a lunch bucket." This is his favorite thing to do. "You're a lunch bucket. You're going to have a lunch bucket glued to your hand your whole life. It's you and your big greasy thumb. He said, 'Get out of here.'" And he threw me out of the lab. And so it was just he and I working there. So I was up in the makeup department and I was doing my apprenticeship duties, filling bottles and powder puffs and taking chairs to the makeup artists, all the things apprentices do. And he kept coming down there all week long and kept checking on me to see what I was doing because he was seething. He wasn't through with me yet. He wanted to get me bad. And so then they had a place outside called a tent, this old blue building. I had set up out there and I was taking early lunch because I came in early. And I see John peeking around the corner. He said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm eating lunch." He said, "Lunch hour is not now, it's an hour from now." I said, "Ben and I told me to take it now because I came in early." And I had drawn a picture of myself hanging on the wall, crucified. And at the bottom I put, "I can laugh when things aren't funny." And John looks over at that thing and he starts to laugh. And he's a big, heavy guy, he's buckled over, the tears are pouring down his face, he's holding his stomach. He just had this huge release. And after he gets through and wipes the tears from his eyes, he said, "Get back in the lab."
I actually want to ask one other thing. Tom, tell us, since we brought up the mutant makeup, tell us a little bit of the evolution of the concept of the mutant makeup from beneath, because obviously that was going to be the big twist reveal for that film, and it had to be obviously convincing and scary.
It took about 3 weeks to figure it out. They brought in a few sculptors. Charlie Schramm, who was from MGM, brilliant makeup artist, who had done Wizard of Oz way back and never been accredited, never had credit. And but a very talented man. And so he was working on mutants, and they had, I think, Pat Nuyen was the one who sculpted most of the 8 faces for the original and most of the other ones going forward. And I think there were 2 other people, I can't remember who they were, but they were busy. Everybody's trying to come up with a mutant head. And I don't remember exactly who it was. Somebody came up with the idea of this veined head rather than distorting the head and making it look more alien. And so that was, they all liked that idea. But then they felt that it looked too sculpted and too modeled. It was Charlie Schramm that came up with the idea of taking caulking, silicone caulking, and putting it over the head and then taking alcohol in your hand and smearing it down so it had this kind of a membrane-ish look, so it had a translucency, and you kind of see into it, had a depth to it. And that's kind of how they came about. And of course, then we had to take those pieces and then take a cast off of that and then make their face, so they could peel their face away from that mutant head and show what they look like.
And thanks to Brian Peck, we actually have one of these mutant faces on display. in
Thank you,
the exhibit.
Brian.
Yay!
As long as I get it back.
Okay, let's kick it out to you. Who wants to jump in here? Yes.
Francis, if you had gotten the chance, would you have liked to have played a chimp?
Yes.
Because from the way you speak of it, you sound like you were really fascinated and almost disappointed that you would have liked to have played one of the more eloquent or...
It's a challenge that I would have welcomed, really. Because I really admire the actors that are able to do that and really give you, really give you a sense of reality.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it is a challenge that I was never really given to that degree. I've worn different kind of things, outfits, and had to struggle with the inadequacy of the weight of the wig and so forth. But to speak through a plastic face or a rubbery face and to give it expression, to give it a sense of humor or to give it a sense of fear, I think it's an extraordinary challenge. Yes, I would have welcomed it. But I guess it wasn't my role. I had just a little patch there.
Yes.
This question's for Mr. Stoker. What did you think when you were approached to do Return to the Planet of the Apes animated series?
I could not believe that. Return to the Planet of the Apes. But that was for television, wasn't it?
Yes.
And
Austin.
Microphone.
oh, I'm sorry. I'm not used to it. Yeah, that was for TV. And I remember talking to, I forgot who I was talking to about that. And I said, how am I going to approach this? It's a television thing and it's the Planet of the Apes. And the person said to me, just try to imagine in your mind you're on stage. You're doing a movie. It's the same as doing a movie. I said, no, but why would they want me to do it this way? I forget what the person was. But his suggestion was, don't even try. Just do it. Just let it come out of your mouth. That's what I did. Did it work? I don't know. I never saw the end. I never saw it.
It's very good.
I've never seen it.
Yeah.
We will be running 6 episodes of the series on April 14th as part of our excursion to the Planet of the Apes event at the Weapons Event Center. It's an amazingly different vision of Planet of the Apes too, in that it's the only one that fully brings the Ape City into a very technologically advanced society.
It's the most like the original book.
Very much, yeah. And I think that, it's interesting that when they had sort of free reign with design, that they would actually give apes such a technologically modern world to live in. But we also have the live action TV series, Bobby, which you were in. Tell us a little bit about going back for that.
It was another job. I got to pay it for a few more textbooks. It was wonderful, and it was totally unexpected, and it taught me something, that med school might not be the path I wanted to be on. I realized that being 4'9" didn't get me to the prom, but it got me back on the set. And I've had a blessed career because of people like Tommy and Dan Skateback, who's responsible for my very first day in the film industry. They opened up my eyes to the fact that this was a tremendous asset. There was nobody my size doing stunts, for one thing, which is what I was best known for throughout the years. But I got to play some amazing characters over the years. I got to play robots who, when you watch them, Buck Henry created a TV series called Quark.
Yeah.
Anybody?
Yep,
Anyone?
yep,
Anyone? Bueller?
Yep.
8 episodes. What were they thinking? It was brilliant. I got to play a horny robot. I was trying to get it on with Siri for 8 episodes. It was wonderful, but it was all because of the introduction I had with Tommy and with Dan Straitbeck and with John Chambers. The TV series, anybody here understands, the difference between a feature film and television is the pace. You've got to do so much, so quickly. And so when you hit your lines, you might get 1 or 2 shots at it. And then they're on to the next scene. But I don't, never mind, that's going to be in the show. So that's the difference. So the budgets were less, the pace was faster, it was so much hotter. And so I wish it had gone more than 1 season. I thought it was better than that. I thought it was not given the opportunity. And I know Roddy was very disappointed that it only went 1 season.
Yeah, I agree with you. Any last thoughts? Yes?
I was going to say first, I appreciate all of you coming and your great talents. And I also want to mention Don Murray is a brilliant actor that goes way back. He even worked with Marilyn Monroe on Bus Stop and was brilliant. And I know it's tough when there's downtime. So even a great actor like you, if you don't mind sharing what it was like when, I don't know if you had to audition for certain roles or what it's like being an actor on downtimes when there aren't a lot of jobs available.
It's terrible. No saving grace. When I've had those, they've been self-imposed usually. I was a wonderful, had a wonderful talent for walking away from successful projects, like asking to be written out of Knots Landing when that was, watched it go on for 14 years. But if you think it's hard for me, can you imagine what it's like for my wife, Elizabeth? One day I said to her, honey, I think I'm going to quit the show, Knots Landing. And it was kind of unbelievable. So that's it. They're not good times.
Well, I hope all of you have also seen Don's performance in Twin Peaks: The Return. So the hour is late. So I want you guys to have an opportunity to maybe say hello to some of our guests. So at this point, we'll conclude the panel. And thank you guys so much for making these films and being a part of this.
Give it up for Alex. This guy's one of his tail off. Let's give it up for Alex.